Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Transformational Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Hyman, coming to you guys live on a beautiful Tuesday morning, March 7th, 2023. Special day for the Transformational Coaching Podcast. Today we're joined live with Coach Trae Allison, head JV baseball coach and varsity assistant at South Florence High School and co-founder of the Sandlapper Baseball League. He's joining us for the first ever segment of Coach's Corner. In true Coach Allison fashion, he's always about being first. So he's going to have an opportunity to do that today. Coach Allison, how are you today?
Doing great, man. I appreciate you having me today. Very honored to be the first to go at this and the guinea pig of all this. Very impressed with what you've been doing. I think you're putting some good material out there, and I hope your listeners are very appreciative of all you've provided. It's good work, man.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you taking time to come on today. I've said for the longest time, we've got tremendous baseball talent, and we have tremendous baseball coaches in this community, and you fall into that category of great coaches who really follow that transformational coaching mindset that we look for, and that's so important to us and our kids and the families of these kids. So we appreciate everything you're doing, and I know our listeners today are going to get some really good information, some insight into who Coach Allison is, what he's all about. I'm sure there's parents at the middle school level, parents that are looking at their kids saying, well, my kid's going to be a part of that program one day. So, what are those coaches all about? And I think you represent that really well. You represent everything great about coaching. You have that blue collar and South Florence brand to a T. You bleed that Columbia blue and gold. So I'm excited for our listeners to be able to hear about that. So without further ado, talk to us a little bit, Coach Allison, about Coach Trae Allison, the man, and Coach Trae Allison, the coach. What you got for us? What do you want listeners to know about you, Coach?
Well, we'll start with the man first. Obviously, we're both gifted in what we do. We have opportunities. The job that I'm doing right now with Capstone, I've been with them for about 12 years now. Just a little bit of information about them. We're a residential, commercial, property claim adjusting firm, specialized in general liability stuff. I oversee our North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland operation, our day-to-day operations. It does require some travel, but all in all, I'm very fortunate to have the freedoms that working for Capstone gives me to spend quality time with my family and to also do what I love to do, my true passion, which is be around the game of baseball. God has certainly blessed me, and I'm thankful for those opportunities every day. And I'm thankful for Capstone that gives me that opportunity to do both work and do something that I truly love to do on the side.
I think not to interrupt you, but I think that's a big thing. I've talked about in the past just work-life balance and stuff. When you have, you work for a company that really appreciates that. And I've coached with you for 6 years now. And, I know that's been a big part of, one of the things that you really, you're a home run hire for any company out there. The fact that, they've been able to keep you and everything else. And that just speaks volumes to the type of company you work for and all that. So I think that's awesome that, I can appreciate that because in my industry, work-life balance, having the ability to do what we love and what you're passionate about, it makes going to work every day easier too. Just knowing like they appreciate that. So.
Well, it does. And, it's crazy. One of the interviewing questions that I received when I was hired from them 12 years ago was, things that I did growing up. And was I an athlete? And obviously playing baseball was a home run for me in the interviewing process as to why they chose to hire me, because that competitive nature that athletes have.
Absolutely.
It's important. But, personal life, my beautiful wife, Tara, I'd be probably fussed at if I did not mention her today. She is an absolute warrior. She supports me in everything I do. She is a avid supporter of Bruin baseball.
She is.
She allows, and I am going to use that word allows, because I think we both have wives that allow us to be at the baseball field 10 months out of the 12 months in a year.
Absolutely.
So she's a warrior. She's a trooper. I love her for it. We have 2 beautiful baby boys. So I say baby boys, but they are now 5 and 3. Ford is 5. Tate is 3. It's funny. I thought, and you got Holt, who's what, almost 4 now?
Yeah, he's 4. He'll be 5 this year.
I thought that the Lord was going to bless me with 2 little girls just basically because of the way of the life that I lived growing up. But I think instead he gave me 2 bad boys who were just as wild and crazy and fearless as I was to make my life that much more difficult. But they're beautiful. They're healthy. They're in their early stages of playing rec league baseball, and
nice.
Out at Greenwood, got them signed up for rookie ball and T-ball. And, I love it. I love being a father. Go ahead.
The question I have for you, you going to coach a little Greenwood baseball this year too?
A matter of fact, I spoke to both the coaches yesterday. Tate's T-ball coach happened to be Ford's T-ball coach, so he knows what I do on the side. And then Ford's coach called me last night, and we talked for a little bit, and he remembered me from being out from Evergreen, which is where where I was raised at, and attended Evergreen Baptist Church at, and he remembered me from being out there. And I told him that I coached at South Florence as well, that I'd be willing to do whatever I can do to help. But right now, my main expectations for my 5-year-old and my 3-year-old is just have fun, man. Just
God,
have
I love
fun
that,
with
man.
The game. Learn the game as much as you can. Have fun with it. If you want to go out in the outfield and dig in the dirt, that's fine. I'm not to fuss at you. Maybe, field a ground ball here now, and get a base hit here and there. But other than that,
that's
just
it.
have fun.
I think, to your point there, I think that's one of the big things that gets overshadowed today. Because I think a lot of parents, when the kids start their baseball journey, not enough parents keep the end in mind. We start putting a lot of extra pressure on them at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all these early ages. And really what we forget is the real pressure cook situations, they come when they get to high school. That's when the game starts getting, you're working 10 months out of year at your craft. The moments mean more. I see so many kids and you see this as a head JV coach, they show up, they're burnt out, they're beat down. And it's just from years and years of just people putting the wrong emphasis on what the game is all about. I mean, we practice this every day. We talk about quality at bats and, doing your job and stuff like that. How many kids show up to you as freshmen and still don't really have a good understanding of what success looks like? And, a runner on third, less than 2 outs, how easy of an at bat that is in terms of, hey, if you want to roll one over to the shortstop there it's okay. Get the run in. I back to my original point. It's something that's missing from the earliest levels of the game. And I love the fact that you just touched on that. Like you're a high school baseball coach,
Yeah.
If anybody's kid should be, prepared to go out and excel and make all-stars and get hits every time and all that, people are going to say, man, Trae Allison's kids, they should be really good at that. But the fact that you're like, I'm not worried about those things right now because I know the pressure's coming down the line. Let's just love the game and have fun, teach them the fundamentals. I think it's great. And that speaks to the volumes to you as why you are a great coach.
Well, and I completely agree with you on that, and we see it at this level where, and listen, we hear people talk all the time about kids that are in the rec league, city league, whatever they're playing, travel ball. Hey, look out for this kid. Look out for this kid. He's 8. He's going to be your next stud. And I'm thinking to myself, he's 8. He may not even want to play baseball when he's 14.
That's it, man.
And that's just, what we're dealing with now. And I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit later on about, what things maybe we see from being coaches at the high school level as to what could be done at the rec league level, maybe focusing more on things. But, and I get it. Winning is important. I get it. Everybody wants to win, man. I hate losing more so than I love to win,
Yep.
But everybody wants to win. But But what are we teaching kids? If we're only emphasizing winning at that level, what are we teaching them?
You're right. 100%. I love it, Coach. It's what it's all about. So talk to us a little bit about your journey through the game. What about, what's your background in baseball?
Yeah, I started at a young age, probably, maybe 5, 6, getting into it, played out at Evergreen, and then went up to Greenwood, then, went to Southside, which, made the middle school team. Middle school team didn't even exist then, but I made the JV team as a 7th grader. So I was a part of the South Florence baseball program from 1992 to when I graduated in 97. I was played JV baseball 7th and 8th grade year, played JV baseball a little bit of my ninth grade year, got brought up to varsity during my freshman year campaign. At that time, we were 1994. We were a top 10 baseball program in the country. Yep. Didn't get to see much playing time at that time. It wasn't until my sophomore year that I became a starter. I was a 3-year starter for South Florence, 2-year all-region, 1-year all-state. I was a part of a team that won the 1996 IP Baseball Classic that's down in Georgetown. I think we're still one of the few programs that's won that tournament twice.
Yep.
Also was a part of the program in 1996 where we, again, were ranked nationally. I think we got as high as 7th in the country. We had a 21-game winning streak, I think, at that time, which may be the longest.
Still the longest in South Florence history. It is.
Yeah. But graduated in 1997, was All-State, was All-American Honorable Mention. I was invited to participate in Team 1, which was played down in Clemson, which showcased some of the top baseball players in the Southeast. Was highly rated, recruited throughout the state, some schools from out of state. I am a Gamecock. I signed with the University of South Carolina, signed a letter of intent to play. It was down between them and Clemson. My dad told me, son, if you signed with Clemson, I will not wear orange and I will not cheer for you, but I will.
True Gamecock.
Yeah. True Gamecock. Unfortunately, my college career did not pan out the way that I had hoped. I got to South Carolina in 1997, came in with a top recruiting class in the country that was under Coach Tanner's first year being hired at South Carolina. Part of that recruiting class locally, Trip Kelly, who was a standout at West Florence High School, Sean Spivey, who was a standout at Lake City, Brian Jeffcoat, who was a standout at Lexington, Kip Boatnight, who obviously was an incredible pitcher in high school and was a Golden Spikes Award winner at South Carolina. Those are a few of the names locally that were in that recruiting class. I came in as a freshman, and I put the weight on the world on my shoulders. I had tremendous amount of pressure on myself to come in and perform right away, and that was just unrealistic expectations that I set for myself. The beginning of my fall practice did not start the way I'd hoped. I had to have I had to have a little sit down one-on-one with myself and try to get back to doing the small things that we continue to talk about. Now I had to get back to doing those small things that made me the player that I was in high school. And I got back to that. And I ended the fall much better than I started the fall. But at the end of the day, it wasn't enough at that time. And Coach Tanner sat me down and we had a realistic conversation. He said, Trae, I want to redshirt you, but realistically, I want you to come back and I want you to be a part of this program because I think you could contribute, as a redshirt freshman. And that hit me. That was an ego booster. That was an ego deflator. It deflated me. It just knocked me out. I think I remember calling my dad, and I believe I was almost in tears because I was just devastated. I don't know how to handle it.
First time in your life. First time in your life you experienced that.
And I was devastated, man.
That's
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was
No,
just
go ahead.
thinking, like, just coaching high school athletes. Something we run into. They show up. They've always been a big fish in a small pond. They've been one of the best one or two players on every team they've ever played for. They show up at South Florence or West Florence or wherever, and they go from being one of the best, the best. Now they're one of the 10 best.
Yeah.
And it's. And that's the first time in their life they've been asked to embrace a role and be really good at it. And even if it's not the role they want, that's a struggle. Mentally, it'll beat you down. I remember, my college journey, as brief as it was, I remember at one point the last time before I hung it up, just kind of looking around at everybody around me saying, yeah, I don't have it anymore, man. Like these dudes, I don't have the fire. I don't have the grit. I don't have the, I don't belong here because I just didn't have it anymore. And yes, that's one of the challenges we run into, as you know, in high school. Managing expectations. A lot of times the problems we run into with players and parents, it comes down to unmet expectations. It sounds like, for your playing career, you ran into a similar situation.
Well, it was the first bit of adversity that I'd ever faced as a baseball player. I was a successful high school baseball player. I had, I was a good teammate. I worked hard. It was what I did. We didn't have the luxuries that kids nowadays have, where you have all these assets at your fingertips. I had to get together. We didn't have fall ball. We didn't have a weight room. We did, but it wasn't like it we got today. You had to do these things on your own. If you wanted to be a good athlete, you had to work on your own. You had to put in the work, and all that work that I'd put in leading up to that point in my life just felt like it had just all just come crashing down. And,
so what'd you do about it, Coach?
Well, my dad, being the man that he was, allowed me to make the decision that I did, which ultimately led me to leave South Carolina and transfer into Francis Marion, which I had reached out to Francis Marion and told them my plans. And I'd also reached out to, Spartanburg Methodist JUCO at the time because my plans were to maybe go play somewhere else. Which is what I ultimately wanted to do, was just freaking play as a freshman. That's what I really wanted to do. And the expectations that I put at myself at South Carolina were just unrealistic. And I didn't want to be redshirted. Like I said, I didn't quite understand what that meant at that time. So I left, and my dad let me make that decision on my own. And it was a mistake. It was a big mistake. I should have never left. I should have stuck around, and I should have fought through the adversity, but I didn't. And I left, and it was a mistake. But I came to Francis Marion the spring of my freshman year in '98. Started some at Francis Marion, played a good bit. Freshman year wasn't that great. It was all right. It was okay. Fortunately for me, Coach Tanner had still maintained contact. He actually helped me get into the Coastal Plains League for that summer. I played for the Florence Red Wolves, who they had just moved from North Carolina into Florence.
Yep.
So that was an easy transition for me, and Coach Tanner helped me get into that league. Played for them that summer, about 25, 26 games into it, tore my rotator cuff. Had some arm soreness, really didn't think much about it. During those times, if you're hurt, you play through it. If you're sore, you keep throwing. And that's what I did, and I ended up tearing my arm. And surgery at the time was an option. I chose not to have surgery. I went through about 8-9 months of rehab. Went from playing third base to playing second base, coming back from that injury. It just wasn't the same. And much like you, I don't know if it was just me leaving South Carolina and the whole thing that happened there. I just lost the love for the game, man. I just didn't want to be around it. My mind was on other things. I was 19, 20. I was in college. I was doing the college thing. I wasn't even focused on baseball anymore. And I just kind of stepped to the side, and I call it a resignation. Nobody retired my jersey, but it was a resignation.
That was great. Well,
but
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. but and so I was in Columbia. So, but anyway, I quit baseball. I stayed at Francis Marion for about another year. I wanted to be back in Columbia, so I ended up transferring back to South Carolina. I ended up graduating from the University of South Carolina. Still followed the South Carolina baseball team. Still love him to this day. Huge fan of Coach Tanner. I love him. He's a great coach. He was very inspirational for me in that 4 or 5 months that I had with him, and the things that I learned from him and the life lessons that I took from that. So I was back in Columbia and stayed in Columbia till about 8 years ago, where
Nice.
I moved back to Florence, and moved back to Florence for the sole purpose that my dad had been battling some health issues. I just got married in 2013, and I think I was 35 when I got married. I mean, I'd lived life. I waited until she found me. Basically, she found me. I didn't find her. She found me.
That's right.
And we moved back to Florence, and then my father passed away, and then Coach Gray reached out to me. And, Coach Gray coached me at South Florence. He was the assistant coach under Jimmy Weatherford, and he had coached me at South Florence, and he had also coached me during Legion baseball a couple years. And he reached out to me, wanting to know if I wanted to help be an assistant coach. And it was almost like I could hear my dad's voice in my head saying, here's your calling, son. Here's your calling. Here's something
That's
you
powerful.
can do.
It's powerful.
And I told him absolutely, I'd be more than happy to come out and help. And it started 8 years ago. And I mean, life's funny that way. I never intended on being a baseball coach. Like, my goal in life was never to be a baseball coach. I was always going to be the baseball player. I was the one getting coached. I wasn't the one coaching. And then 8 years ago, it just completely flipped. And I mean,
it's funny how it works out, man.
It is
funny how that, life's it's a weird thing, man. To your point about that, you looking back now, I'm like, man, I should have been why wasn't I thinking, like, when I was playing, hey, I want to be a coach one day? Because we had great coaches. Like, Jimmy Weatherford was a great coach for you. I played for Hall of Famer. Just, he's on the Mount Rushmore of South Florence baseball coach. He's probably on the Mount Rushmore of coaches in the state of South Carolina, definitely in the PD area. Yeah. But we had great coaches that were great men. I had played for Coach Gray my whole career, and it's shocking to me, like, to your point, like, all these years later, it's like, oh, I'm back in, like, I got back into the game because my oldest son was playing. And then through that, I found the love and the passion for it, and ended up, at South Florence coaching. And just weird. I could never put my finger on why I wasn't thinking about coaching. I think, to your point, it's like we always viewed our lives as, I'm the player. I'm going to be the player. I've got this, these aspirations for D1 baseball and Major League Baseball and all this other stuff. And then, it doesn't happen. And then I think our natural defense mechanism is to shut down from the game completely, because it's a painful process. We talked about this with our players last night about, when it's over, and there's no pain outside of losing somebody you love. It's a tough pill to swallow.
It is a tough pill to swallow. And it was very real for me, having to swallow that pill when baseball was no longer a part of my life. And Coach Gray, just came back, and it just was a blessing. And he put the game that I gave so much to back in my life, and gave me that opportunity to be with these kids and build these relationships. And you talk about, coaches being inspirational. I tell people to this day, I tell our own players to this day, the three most influential men in my life are my father, my grandfather, and my high school baseball coach.
Yep.
Those are the three most influential people of my life. Coach Weatherford had a huge impact on me growing up, and what I did, and who I am today as a man.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so 8 years I've been coaching. I was just recently named a JV head coach leading into the 2022 season. I've been an assistant under under Coach Dickerson, who was the JV head coach, who's now the head varsity assistant. I've worked with Coach Gray at the varsity level and with our Junior Legion program for the last 8 years as well, which, as we both know, is no longer going to be our Junior Legion program.
Sandlapper baseball, baby.
For baseball.
If you want to inquire about a spot in the league, limited to the first 24, we're filling up fast.
We are filling up fast.
Shameless plug.
But it's again, it's just another exciting thing that I think is coming to this area, to us, that baseball brings. And
absolutely.
I'm excited.
Well, thank you for sharing your background in the game. A quick story I'll tell about Coach Allison is we talked today about the impact that our players in our program have on young people at the recreational level, at the middle school level, and stuff like that. And my cousin Jason Hyman played baseball with Trae Allison, and now Jason didn't do too much playing. He did a lot of chewing sunflower seeds and, drinking waters and stuff like that, pulling splinters out of his butt. No, I'm just kidding, Jason. I love you. He played a good bit.
Hey, but was as good as I was, but he was out there catching ground balls with me.
That's right. And he tells me all the time, he said, man, if I would have played on these teams, I would have started every game, man. I mean, back then, y'all had about 9 D1 guys on your roster, but anyway, so, I spent my early years growing up going to watch the Bruins play. And, people like Coach Allison, the impact they had on South Florence baseball, they were the reason that I had a dream of wearing a South Florence baseball jersey one day. It's because they were cool and they played hard and they won a lot. And they just I tell our teams now, like that team, when they got off the bus, they had a certain amount of swagger, and you knew that they were there to take care of business. They were mean. They played the game hard. They played for each other, and, they accomplished a lot of stuff, but it was y'all, that really made being a member of the South Florence baseball team cool. And that's kind of growing up. That's why I wanted to play. And we tell our players all the time, like, you are having an impact on those young people that show up to our game. So carry the torch, represent the program the right way, because to some kid, you're their hero. And for me, Coach Allison, you were one of my heroes when I was younger. So
I appreciate that, man. That means a lot to me. And, we preach to our kids every day about enjoying the moment and it being a brotherhood. And, and there's players that I played with today or back then that I still talk with to this day. And those are memories that you'll have for the rest of your life. Kids, if you're out there, don't take it for granted. It will eventually be over. And you'll have nothing but memories and nothing but relationships. So what you make of those is what you're going to get out of it.
100%. All right. So, yeah, man. No, thanks for sharing that story with us. So I want to shift gears a little bit and kind of get into your role within the program and kind of, some stuff that maybe you can pass on to future Bruins and stuff like that. So, you're the head of the JV program. I know what you're all about. I've been coaching with you for a long time. I think we got the right guy leading our freshmen and sophomore, preparing them to be Bruins, varsity Bruins at some point. But you have such a critical job in the development of the future of our program. So talk a little bit about some of the things that are important to you that it helps you set those players up for success as sophomores, success as juniors, success as seniors for the rest of their career.
Well, I think first and foremost it's important to understand the purpose of JV baseball, or for that matter, the middle school baseball. And this is my opinion, and it may differ from other JV head coaches and middle school head coaches. But in my opinion, I think the JV team, the middle school team, is intended to feed the varsity team. And my top priority as a JV head coach is preparing these players to play at the varsity level. Right. At its most basic, that means developing their skills and their baseball IQ to a sufficient level. More than that, it also means getting them ready, getting them ready to play using the systems and tactics of the varsity team.
Love it.
Everything. Well, and it's true. Everything that varsity is doing, we're mimicking at the JV level. And just last night, you and I were discussing, it might have been yesterday, might have been you, maybe been myself and Rhodes, how we can get that format to the Southside team.
Absolutely.
Which is important, from everything from base running technique to getting leads to bunting to bunt coverages to first and third defense to first and third offense. Even my signals mimic the varsity signals.
Right.
And we do this as a program, and I believe in this approach. And as a coach, I believe in it because we want to make sure when we bring a kid up from the JV squad or a player is starting his first season on varsity, that he's already going to be familiar with all things varsity, which will make competing at the varsity level a smoother transition.
I love that, man. I think we've said for a long time, the only thing that really changes as players progress through the various levels of baseball is the pace of the game, right?
Yep.
The ball's coming at you harder. The plays are happening faster. The velocity on the pitches go up. And so our job as coaches is to try to help slow the game down for those guys. And one way you can slow the game down is by actually knowing, the material, knowing what we need to do, not just I know that, you truly know that. I heard Andy Hallett one time talk about, what's 2 + 2, and everybody knows that's 4. But if you said, well, what's 113 times 72? Well, I got to pull my calculator out because I don't know that. So our job as coaches to instill these situations in them, instill their baseball skills and IQ, make it higher. So there is no learning curve. So, they just know. I mean, we were doing double cuts yesterday, and it started off a little rusty, but I think it finished pretty good. And it was just an example of something we talked about with them, hey, ball down the line, as part of your pre-pitch routine, you have to be running this scenario through your mind, and those are the things that are learned. You start knowing, actually knowing these stuff at the 9th and 10th grade level. That way, when you get on the varsity field, your pre-pitch, it's already part of your pre-pitch routine and you know it. So,
well, and that's what, and I personally think that and it may be like this at other schools. I know some may not be like this, but I personally think that our JV program is at an advantage in comparison to other JV programs when we talk about potential success later on in the high school career. And I think we've seen those results at the varsity level after a JV player becomes a varsity player. I certainly credit my development at the JV level because I was able to practice and compete with varsity players as a JV player. And we do the same with our JV players now. We're practicing together. And, many coaches use that phrase, what is it? Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
Iron sharpens iron, which is absolutely true. But imagine, and hopefully this makes sense. Imagine those sharp pieces of iron, the varsity players, spending time with less sharp pieces of iron, the JV players, and then working with them.
Yep.
And the JV players getting to see how the varsity's handling things, and the JV players getting to compete with the varsity players. I mean, there's absolutely a mutual benefit of making others better through mentorship, and I believe that our varsity players do an incredible job of taking these younger JV players and maybe, I don't want to say, put them under the wing, but,
that's what they do.
I mean, they give them advice. They help them out. The other day, Aiden Palmer went down to go talk to Mason Coleman about something that Aiden saw with his pitching. And both Aiden's one of the top pitchers in the state, in my opinion, probably the top pitcher in the state. Definitely the top left-handed pitcher in the state. And Mason Coleman is another kid who's got a potentially good future ahead of him as a left-handed pitcher. And what better guy to get advice from than someone like Aiden Palmer? And
nailed it.
I think And that's why I love our practice format. Our JV kids are out there practicing with our varsity kids, and I think it makes them better. It helps further prepare them for the varsity level.
Absolutely.
You know,
100% agree with that. I think one thing that as you look across our practices, what you see is you see a lot of guys drinking from the same water hose, a lot of guys getting the same coaching, being held to the same standard, and all that. So I think it's great. Now, you touched on something a little while ago about development.
yep.
I think as you look across the state, there's people that have different philosophies on winning versus development. The JV level, I always kind of thought, like, regardless of what the level was, we had to be instilling some level of competition and some value in winning, because I think later in life you got to win, and you learn how to win, how to deal with adversity and stuff like that at the lowest levels of life. And the quicker you can pick it up and get it, the better off you are. So talk about, as the head coach of the JV team, how do you balance development versus winning? Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, first, I believe that winning games really will take care of itself if you prepare the team to play hard and always give their best effort. And that is what we're going to do, regardless of the lineup that is run out on the field. But
that's great.
To answer that question, the way I look at balancing development versus winning at the JV level could really apply to maybe any situation where you have like a first team, second team situation, and now with a third team situation with middle school baseball, being the first team being varsity, second team being JV, third team now being the middle school. By that, what I mean is that the competitive focus is on the first team, which is the varsity, and there's a clear link between the two squads. The second team being JV, which is the feeder for your first team, and then now middle school being the feeder for JV. JV is clearly the more developmental team, and usually your JV consists of your younger, less experienced players. That doesn't mean that you ignore development at the varsity level, and it doesn't mean that JV teams don't play to win, because we most certainly do. The balance for the varsity between competition and development just leans more toward competition than it does for the JV. I don't look at our JV schedule and look at an opponent and say, what do we need to do to prepare for this opponent? Everything that we do as a JV program should be focused on our own improvement, worrying about what we can control, playing to our strengths, having what I think is the absolute critical piece of being a baseball player is having the right mental approach in the game.
Man, I love that.
You're mentally checked out. It's not going to matter. If you don't have mental toughness in this game, you're going to be out of it very quickly. Baseball is hard, and it'll put you down quick. It put me down. It's put you down. It's putting guys in Major League Baseball down. You're going to fail at this game more so than you succeed. And if you don't have the right mental approach and doing the small things, you're not going to be successful. So, to me, the JV program needs to work on that. Worrying about what we can control. Worrying about our own improvement. Worrying about doing the small things that will bring success on the field as a JV team, and that will bring individual success to a JV player.
Man, you got me ready to run through a daggone brick wall, Coach.
It's tough. It is tough. It's tough because everybody loves to win, man. Everybody wants to win. And your listeners may probably think to yourself, hell, this coach, daggum, he ain't winning baseball games if he's doing that. Well, that's wrong. We are very successful at the JV level in developing and in winning, running out different lineups. And it's because we're putting so much focus on development at that age that when I put in a kid who may not be playing all the time, he's going to be successful because he's prepared to play, and we develop him in the right way.
Absolutely. I think one thing I love, and I've been your assistant on JV for ever since you took over that. And I think one thing I love is whenever we start talking about lineups and stuff like that, you always have a really good plan for how you're going to make sure a guy that doesn't play every day gets put into good situations. I think that speaks volumes to the type of coach you are. But one thing I appreciate is the fact that, I know a lot of coaches who will run that second lineup out in a doubleheader, and they'll find themselves in a close ball game late in the game, and they'll start taking their ones, throwing them back in the lineup to give themselves an opportunity to win. I think for you, one thing I love is the fact that you understand that the only way we can grow in this game and get better is to put those guys in those situations. And you allow them to go out there and succeed, or you allow them to go out there and fail. But either way, there's a lesson to be learned from it. And I've always appreciated and respected that, because I know a lot of people who would say, well, I don't want this loss on my record, so I'm going to take this kid out because I want my stud to get an opportunity to hit here and potentially win the game for us. So that's just, from the outside looking in, being an assistant coach with you, that's one thing that I've always appreciated. So,
and I think you just got to wear a different hat as a JV head coach. My first priority is development. And, that just means I might do something that reduces our chances to win today, with the understanding that hopefully it improves the varsity chances of winning down the road.
Nailed it.
The way I look at it, I think playing time and or playing position decisions. Where am I going to put a kid who I feel can be most successful today?
Awesome.
I get it. People want to win baseball games. I understand that. And, and we win them at the JV level, but it's because of the players we select. It's the buy-in from those players from a weight training and conditioning perspective that starts in the fall, and then the trust that they put in us as coaches to put them in situations to be successful.
Love it.
And that's yeah.
So you've hit on a lot of really good stuff. I had another question for you about non-negotiables, but I feel like we got about 18 minutes left. So I'm going to skip over that, because I feel like you've kind of, I'm not going to skip over that. Give me a.
I'll be brief on this.
Okay, let's don't skip over that, because I think that's important.
I have many. I'm not going to name them all. I have, in our dugout, you'll see when you go into our dugout, there's a laminated piece of paper, 10 simple ways to be great, and all 10 of those are really should be non-negotiables. But my biggest non-negotiable is be positively contagious.
Yes.
And what's that mean? That means be positive. Pump positive thoughts through your team, because as easy as positive thoughts can transfer, negative thoughts can transfer just as easily. And you don't want that pumping through your dugout, man. That can ruin a team. That can ruin.
I love that, man.
Ruin a player. A good attitude is contagious, and a bad one is as well. And you don't want a bad attitude. You got to be positively contagious. That's my non-negotiable right there.
That's awesome. Well, and it's hey, that's a good one, man. That I think to your point there, though, like, this game is so hard. I talked about this on one of my podcasts in the past. Like, this is from a guy named Steve Springer. He's one of the greatest mental coaches, in my opinion. But he talks about the fact that this is the greatest morale killing sport in the world. You're going to fail 3 out of 10 times to be a Hall of Famer, and it's all about, who handles failure better than who handles success, right? And to your point about positively contagious, you've got to keep that positivity, and you got to keep having the courage to show up and fight, even after you're on an 0 for 10 streak, or you've been getting tattooed on the mound or making errors or whatever. So I love that.
Well, and to add just a little bit to that, you could, listen, I certainly understand being frustrated. If you feel like you let your team down, or you feel like there was a situation in the game that you didn't perform at your best, I understand the frustration. You get frustrated. And I've mentioned this to our JV team. There should be like a 3-second rule. You got to have a short memory in this game, man. You got to, you be mad, but don't act like an idiot. Don't throw your freaking bat halfway across the field. Don't chunk your helmet across the dugout. Don't go in there punching walls. You're not hurting anybody but yourself. It's not your fist fault that you struck out. I understand. I understand being frustrated, but you got to have a short memory. And if you carry that negativity with you throughout the remainder of the game, you're not going to hurt anybody else but yourself. And then there may be another opportunity in the game where that negativity is going to affect your team because you're going to do something because you're not in the right state of mind.
Right.
It's going to cost your team a run or something.
That's awesome, man. So powerful, man. That's, if we could just bottle that up and put it in everybody, we'd be in a good spot. So
if I could have gone back and told my 15-year-old self this, I might have been drafted,
Me too, man. Me too. All right. So we're going to shift gears one last time. We got about 15 minutes left. We're going to talk about three really vital people really quick and kind of, your perspective on what they can do to make sure our kids are more prepared. I've talked about this in the past. I feel one of the challenges we run into as high school coaches is, kids are showing up less and less prepared. And what I mean by that, I don't mean they don't have their bat, they don't have cleats, I mean mentally, like from a baseball IQ standpoint, from a understanding of the game standpoint, work ethic standpoint, concept of team standpoint, they're just not as prepared for the high school game. So I want to talk about three specific people. So the first one is, what is something that our local rec coaches and local travel coaches can put an emphasis on that would have future Bruins better prepared for when they got to high school?
Well, first, and I hope that I don't come off thinking that I know more than these coaches, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I think there's too much emphasis on winning and less emphasis on the fundamentals of the game and how to play the game.
Yep.
I don't care that little Johnny was the stud of your championship team. If little Johnny doesn't know that a man on second and he's playing first base and there's a hit to right field, where does he need to go to be a cutoff? And
right.
What happens if he's not there to be that cutoff? Well, what's going to happen is that run who's rounding third is probably going to score regardless because a clean base hit to right field. But that guy who got that base hit is ended up going to take second and get in scoring position, which could ultimately be the winning run, ball game over, because little Johnny didn't get in the right spot. Let's focus more on fundamentals, less about winning. I mean, you've got to focus on development. You got to focus on fundamentals. Are we teaching the proper ways to run bases? I mean, and I love watching you coach every day, Brandon. I tell you, you do an incredible job with our base running, and I truly believe it makes a daggone difference because it puts pressure on the opponent when you know how to run the bases the right way. Do you know how to get the right lead? Are you learning how to bunt the right way? I mean, there's kids that come to us that literally hold the bat, squeezing the bat with their hands to bunt. And, it's just, turning double plays. Are we teaching the importance of bunting? Not just how to bunt, but why are we bunting?
Yep.
Which comes back to sportsmanship. Teach sportsmanship. If children are watching professional sports today to learn sportsmanship, that's where you're getting the flip bats at. That's where you talk about mouthing off at an umpire and then smack talk back and forth because that's where they're learning sportsmanship. Sportsmanship is something that's taught at an early age.
Yep.
Those are things that need to be spent more time on: sportsmanship, fundamentals of the game, learning the game. I think those three things are critical to a development of a kid as versus winning. I know 100%. You want to win. I get it. Everybody wants to win, man. But what are you doing for the future of our kids if they're not learning how to play the game of baseball?
That's it, man. I've said for a long time, man, our job as coaches, we got to leave the world better than we found it. And if I could go back to myself 10 years ago when I first got into coaching my own son, I've told this story plenty of times. I ran him out of the game because I didn't know how to be a good coach. And I think that's happening a lot at the rec levels now and at the travel ball level. It's nothing against those guys because for every bad one, there's 10 good ones. Yeah. But I just think –
and not to interrupt you, and we have some good, we have some good travel ball guys. Like I was listening to your podcast the other day, and you were talking about John Chase, who's an incredible supporter of Bruin baseball. He's a former teammate of mine. he's up in my office a couple times a week, and we'll talk about baseball, and he takes things that we're doing and he will instill it in his players, which is what you want to do. Now, he cares about winning also, but he's also trying to develop his players to be the best baseball players they can be. So when they get to that level of high school baseball, that they're ready and they can transition into that without having to start over.
Yep.
I think today, the proper way to get loose, we talk about this with our kids all the time, the right way to get loose. And I truly believe that might be a reason you see a lot of injuries nowadays in these younger kids, because they're not properly taught how to get loose. And then obviously they're being overworked too, but they're not getting loose the right way to begin with. I mean, long tossing, the importance of long tossing, how that strengthens your arm,
Everybody's looking for the quick fix, man. A lot of people want the quick way to throw 90 instead of the slow and steady process. It's crazy.
There's great programs. We have great rec departments. Greenwood is a great rec department. Del May is a great rec department. The new little league, I think, is going to be great.
Yes.
Well, I wish we could spend more time out in the community during the off season, obviously, but it's a 10-month job with us, and we're busy all season, almost as busy in the off season we are in season. Just spend more time with these coaches and not telling them to do it this way, but just showing them what we do, and maybe that'll help.
Give them a blueprint.
Blueprint.
If you're listening to this and you're a rec coach or a travel coach, and like that's something you'd be interested in, let us know. We'd be more than happy to try to work something out to kind of, if we have an opportunity to maybe do a clinic for you, or come out to one of your practices or whatever. That's something we definitely. We're all about growing the game. So and
it's the fundamentals of the game that make this game so hard that they need to work on. It's the small things, the fundamentals.
Absolutely. All right, so we got about 5 minutes. So we're going to close it down after this question. The other important part of this equation from a development standpoint is the parents. I've talked extensively about parents and kind of their role and how important they are in the process of a player, buying into their role, executing their role, and everything else. So, as the head JV coach, what are some observations you've made on what parents can do a little bit better to help prepare their kids for when they get to you?
Man, this is just, I don't think this. This just isn't just applying to our JV players or middle school players. I think this is just kids today across this country in this game of baseball. And I hope parents don't take this the wrong way, but the players that come to us are not mentally prepared for the failures that play in this game is going to bring. And we talked about it a little bit ago. You're going to fail more times than not at playing baseball. It's hard. Like I said earlier, this game will put you down quick. And the kids today, not just at South Florence, but just in my overall view, they don't know how to respond to failure. As a hitter, you're not going to be successful every time at the plate. You're just not. And that's okay. Yes, you want to believe that you're going to be successful. You have to have confidence in order to be a good baseball player. However, you don't mentally check out when you're not successful. And I think that starts in the home. I think that has to be – I think there's too much pressure for kids to be successful every at-bat. Or every time they make a pitch, every pitch has to be a strike. Every time they're at the plate, you got to get a hit. And if you're not getting that hit, what do you normally see? You see a father going to a dugout talking to his kid about what he did wrong. To me, that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on a kid who's 7 and 8 or 9 or 10. And that just comes to us, when they have an at-bat. And to them, it may not be a quality at-bat, but to us, it is a quality at-bat. And they're pouting. They just don't. How you respond to adversity defines you as a baseball player, and how you respond to adversity defines you as a man. It's as simple as that. And kids need to be better prepared to respond to adversity the right way. And that's all for them.
That's what I'm talking about. Man, I felt that one. Say it one more time for the people in the back, Coach Allison.
I said how you respond to adversity defines you as a baseball player, and how you respond to adversity defines you as a man. If you respond the wrong way, you're not going to be successful in anything you do in life.
It's great input from Coach Allison there. You know what? I was going to ask one more question because we had like 2 minutes left.
Okay,
but
we got time.
Well, I just don't want to take away from the podcast episode because that was the best way to close it down right there. But since I got you, one last thing.
Okay.
What's your favorite thing about being a coach?
Oh man, the relationships with the players, the relationships with the coaches that I work with. I love working with these kids every day. For me, it's a feeling of satisfaction from helping these kids develop and achieve their goals on the field and off the field. I said it earlier. My baseball coach was a huge inspiration in my life, and I hope that one day these kids can say the same thing, that Coach Allison really made a difference in my life and where I am today. And then obviously the coaches that I work with, you, Rhodes, Coach Gray, Coach Scott, Coach Timo. I mean, it's a brotherhood. That same feeling that you get when you're a baseball player, of that sense of fraternity, that brotherhood feeling, we got it now as a coaching staff, and I think that's why we're one of the best in the state. We're one of the best in 4A baseball, is our camaraderie, our relationships. Yes, we argue. Yes, we disagree. But at the end of the day, we come to an understanding that the decisions that's being made is for the best interest for the team and the best interest for the player to be successful.
Man, Coach Allison with some pure audio gold this morning, Coach. That's what I'm talking about. Man.
Well, it's a great day, baby. It's Tuesday, you know.
We got the old
today.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, I've talked about this in the past, man. You know, from a coaching standpoint, outside of our wife and kids, you know, these are some of the most meaningful and impactful relationships in our lives, man. And I think good coaches out there, they all share in that feeling that, you know, it's a brotherhood. It's, you know, and to your point about, you know, kind of where we're at as a program. Yeah, we have great kids. We've got great parents, but we got great coaches too. And I think sometimes, you know, we don't do that to beat our chest and everything else. I just think at the end of the day, when I look around at why we've been able to have the success we've had over the years, it comes back to, you know, we've been able to stay the course as an entire coaching staff, continue to get better, you know, and really get our kids to buy into the things that are going to help them be successful. And then they go and just do the work, and they make us look a lot better than we are sometimes. So, but
right. And I think buy-in is the key word there, and I think it starts at the very top. It starts with the parents, to buy in, the trust that they have in us, to watch over their kids, to mentor their kids, to buy in and trust from the kids, and then us as coaches. I mean, I think it's got to be that way. You can have great coaches, you have great players, but you have some disagreements going on outside the fence with parents. We've seen it. It'll destroy a program. We've seen it with other programs destroy other programs when they have more talent.
Yep. That's 100% true, man. All right. First ever episode of Coach's Corner on the Transformational Coaching Podcast. That was, hey, I think Coach Rhodes Dickerson's next, and he's got some big shoes to fill on that one, man. Well, I knew Coach Allison would come off the top rope here and really set the bar really, really high. That's what he does. So, Coach, that was a phenomenal job. Thank you for spending an hour of your time. I know you're a busy guy. Spend an hour of your time to, you know, really talk and, you know, help grow the game a little bit, give some insight into things that are important to you and things that are important to our program at South Florence. So, can't thank you enough for that. How can people get in touch with you, Coach? You got a Twitter feed or you got a Twitter thing or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Facebook as well. I'm on Facebook, Trae Allison, Trae, last name Allison. I'm on Twitter at Trae Allison, I believe. Sandlapper Baseball, you can get in touch with me. The district email, you can get in touch with me, whatever. I'm not hard to find. If you can't find me those ways, come to South Florence Baseball Field. I'll be out there.
That's it. All right, Coach. Well, thank you for everything you do for the game. We're going to shut it down now. Best of luck to you for the rest of this JV season and this varsity season. I'll be right there with you for along for the journey. And to all the listeners, thank you for spending your time listening to the content. Thank you for the follows, the likes, the reviews, everything you're doing to help grow this podcast. And we appreciate it. We couldn't do it without you. So That's going to wrap up episode 12 of the Transformational Coaching Podcast. Thank you for joining. We'll get this up very soon because this is just absolute great stuff. And we'll catch you next time. Be cool and go Bruins. See ya.